yourself first. You know, I mean, even if you have bills, you have to say, well, the money that I earn, a certain amount of it goes in the bank for me first. Then I take care of everything else. You know, and you have to have some sort of forecast to say, you know, it's like a trial balance sheet. You know, what are your liabilities and what are your assets? I mean, I kind of keep it just that simple. Pay myself and then sit down and say, okay, this is what I know our liabilities are, and this is what our assets are. And then the things that we like to enjoy, to go out and eat, to go travel, etc. Then those things, we are able to afford those things by using that mindset.
So you learned good money habits at a young age, and you're retired now, and I want to talk some about that in a little bit. But have there been any notable money mistakes that you've made along the way, or have you been very consistent in making good decisions?
Well, I've been very consistent, but I'm not to blame my ex. But one of the things that was a contributing factor to our marriage not making it was money. You know, she was in a totally different place as far as spending money, and that caused a lot of friction in in our home. And unfortunately, I'm going to say that was a mistake. We certainly got married. We were young. We were in love and all that. But by me not putting my foot down harder and discussing money with her in a more effective way, I mean, I think that's a mistake that I made. Another critical mistake that I made was buying a timeshare. Oh my gosh, I bought a timeshare, and you know the story on timeshare. That we lost money.
Sure.
We lost money. So to me, that is probably the biggest mistake that I ever made.
So Debbie and I touched upon this topic a bit in somewhat separate way, but you know, in speaking about your first marriage, is the number one reason couples get divorced is related to money fights and money disagreements. And so, you know, what you shared, not that we need to know all the gory details, is a fairly common storyline with failed marriages. It's the number one reason. And the thing about it is, sometimes it could be a lack of money, and that's why there's pressure and stresses and fights. But it goes beyond that. Even households where there's quote unquote enough money and there's some wealth and income, if there's tremendous disagreement on the fundamental priorities with money, spending versus saving, related to debt, and maximizing income versus work-life balance, if there's tremendous disagreements in a marriage on this front, it's incredibly difficult to have a successful marriage. And so would you say that with you and Debbie, more often than not, you're on the same page in terms of priorities with money?
Yes, we are on the same page because, well, that was one of the things we discussed when we first met. Said, well, why are we in the situation that we were in? Both of us were estranged from our spouses when we met, and we were had an incredible amount of debt. So as we said, okay, look, you know, if we're going to be together, one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to be on the same sheet of music about money. That's just the way it is. So we have some basic rules, like nobody spends over $100 without conferring with the other person. Plain and simple, you know.
Good.
We do things like Debbie has some money that goes into a separate account for her if she wants to buy me something and doesn't want me to know that it's coming because I'm monitoring the money accounts, you know. But that's just one of the things that we agreed upon, you know. When it comes down to loaning money to people, etc., that's a decision that we make together. When we buy big ticket items, automobiles, houses, or whatever, we are always on the same sheet of music. We have an agreement, and we know that we have to make certain concessions because you don't get everything that you want in a marriage. You have to make sure that you have a good working relationship, and we do have that about our money situation and our lives.
And would you say, Joelle, who you've met, I think a couple of times, right? Is a lot of it? It seems to me, and I'm only in one relationship, so my personal experience is just my one marriage. But I've met and spoken with hundreds of couples over the course of my 27-year career. It seems like communication, consistent communication on the money topic is very important, where sometimes if there's disagreement, couples might just kind of sweep it under the rug and not really address it, and the problem might worsen over time. Hard feelings might get even harder over time, but just open communication, that purposefulness of going through the budget, looking at an investment portfolio together, talking about big purchases and how they're going to be paid for, whether it's going to be cash or debt, and how much debt and how much should be spent and the timing of those things. Just that communication goes a long way to keeping a couple on the same sheet of music, to use your term. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that.
So do you still have, I'm just curious, do you still have the timeshare?
Oh, no. No, we just cut our losses because I realized, I said, you don't know about the maintenance fees. That's the catch-all.
Oh, yeah.
And so I said, well, I told Debbie, I said, you know what? These maintenance fees are going to continue to go up. We basically own the timeshare, but the maintenance fees are going to continue. If you think about it, so the next 20 years, you're going to have repurchased that timeshare 2 or 3 times, but you'll never get away from the maintenance fees. That's the part that you can't control. You can pay the $12,000 off, whether you finance or pay outright, but you'll never get away from the maintenance fees.
Yes. So, and I didn't think we would go here in this conversation, but full disclosure, I'm a financial planner. I consider myself pretty savvy with money, and I've been successful in earning money over my career, Gil, and my wife and I have built a very nice life for ourselves. But I would have bought 1 or more timeshares along the way if it wasn't for Joelle saying no. And I'm grateful that she said no. And we joke about it because vividly I remember we did one of those and this was when we were younger and money was not as plentiful as it is now for us. And we went to New York City on one of those weekends where it's, a discounted price and it's a timeshare, but you have to agree to a 60 or 90-minute presentation, that kind of thing. Very common, right?
Right.
And we went there. We're not going to buy. We're just going to go there. We'll take advantage of things. Like 10 minutes into the presentation, I'm like, I think we should do this. But I'm glad we didn't. So switching gears a bit, you had a career in the U.S. military and the Army. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you for your service. How did you end up in the military?
Well, I was a college student, University of Maryland, and I really wasn't doing well. Not because I didn't have the intellect, but I was just having way too much fun.
Okay.
So I just decided, my first wife was in college with me. I said, well, I'm not getting anything done here, so I'm just gonna leave. And I left, and I moved to Washington, D.C., and we ended up, she was pregnant, and I wasn't going to go back home, and I wasn't going to ask my parents for any help. So I said, well, what can I do? I went down to the recruiter, joined the military. I said, well, I can get very cheap medical care for me and my family being in the military, and 2, I can take advantage of the GI Bill. So I'll do 4 years and I'll get out. Well, 4 years turned into 26 years, and I'm glad that it did. But that's how it started.
So, Gil, before joining the Army, did you seek the counsel of anyone? Now, you were married at the time, and you had at least one child at the time?
Right.
So, I mean, you were a grown man, right? So, was this something that you sought the counsel of your dad or anyone else, or this is just something that you made up your mind to do independently and went out and did it?
I know I needed to have a solution to this situation I was in. I just went and did it.
Okay. And so you were going to go in for 4 years, get
Right.
quality medical care, be eligible for the GI Bill so that you would be able to go back to school. So how does 4 years end up adding up to 26 years? Help me with how that happened.
Well, my first duty station was Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which was great because my ex-wife was from D.C. and I was from Baltimore.
Sure.
So that's very close to family. But then they had something. The reenlistment bonuses were pretty attractive during that time, and so I was 2 years into my enlistment, and I had an opportunity to reenlist. They let you have an early out, if you will, so that you can reenlist. And I said, well, I think I got something like, I don't know, $10,000, $11,000 or something like that if I took a burst of six, if I took 6 more years. So I did. I reenlisted for 6 more years and went to Korea. And by the time I got to the end of that enlistment, I was getting close to 10. I was like, I may as well just go ahead and do the whole 20. And that's how it ended up being 26 years.
Very good. So you had career military, eligible for the pension. You have, and I want to talk some more about retirement in a moment, but you have a nice life in retirement. And in thinking about younger generations, somebody that is thinking about joining the military or a career in the military, can somebody join the military today and be financially successful over the course of their lives? You think that's still attainable?
It is attainable. It's attainable because, one, the salaries, the pay rates have been increased exponentially since I joined the military in 1972. I was a private. I think I was probably making $4,500 a year as a private. That same private right now makes around about $19,000 a year. So the pay rates have increased. Also, they have an investment vehicle. It's called TSP, and it is the military's, the government's 401k plan. They didn't have anything like that when I was in, and so yeah, you can be successful, but again, you have to know something about personal finance and take advantage of the opportunities when you're overseas living in government housing and don't have all the expenses of housing that you normally do when you're back here in the States. Yes, the answer to that question is yes, you can, whether you're just one of the family members is in the military or both. Like my wife and I, with us having 2 military salaries, we benefited while we were in the military, and certainly we're benefiting now that we've retired.
Very good. I listen a lot to Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, but he is a get-out-of-debt money guru. That's his major thrust, is get out of debt. He has an incredibly popular book, The Total Money Makeover, that sold a gazillion copies. And his podcast is one of the top, I think, 3 most listened to downloads in the country. Unfortunately, way more popular than my show, but that's a different conversation. But one of the things he points out on his show regularly is that if you go outside the gates of a U.S. military base, there's a crazy amount of places for you to spend your money unwisely.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that, you've, I imagine, had different duty stations. That's a pretty accurate depiction?
Yeah, it is. That's just the way it is. When you're in a military installation, outside the gate, there are more pawn shops, places for getting alterations to your uniform, having name tags made, huge number of barbershops. And I'm not saying that those businesses prey on the military, but they know that there's a large military population there.